Hi everybody, Beth here from Access Paranormal for this week's I Want to Know, and I'm going to wait a little bit until a couple of people jump on in. First thing I wanted to mention that this will be the last one for the next probably 3 weeks, I would say. I will be flying out of Australia for a couple of weeks, and on the third week I'll be flying back, so I probably won't be in the best of shapes to be doing an I Want to Know. Maybe the I want to know is probably going to be more like I want to know how I'm going to survive tomorrow at work after jet lag. So probably not really something for Facebook Live. Hi Nicole, hi Karen, oh Tina, good to see you here guys. So this week's I Want to Know is all about trigger objects and do they actually work? But before we start to delve into if they actually work or not, it's good to have a little bit of a look at actually what they are and why investigators actually choose to use them. Now, there's two aspects to it. There is one where it's looked upon from a point of familiarity. So it's used as a way to entice activity and sort of a response from people who have passed, energies that have passed, and they want to, they may be really loved a particular object, or they may really hated a particular object. Hi everybody, hi Mick. And they may have actually just been really intense. I mean, again, this depends on where you're getting your information from, because we are going on possible historic location in sort of information. So if there is information that has said that this person really loved this table, or really loved this chair, or anything like that, if there's any information that's obviously solidifies that, then you can actually use that particular object. But often that is one aspect, is there is actually emotion attached to that particular object. And as I said, it could be love or hate as well. It could be someone really hated. To me, it would probably be the oven in the kitchen if it was a hate thing, but people know how much I really love cooking. So that's one aspect of it. And there can be all sorts of objects, like I mentioned. I mean, it can be toys. Toys are very popular with people who have in locations that children have meant to have passed away in. I know that we've used a beer in a pub, surprise, it's Australia, and put it on the table, on the actual bar itself, and then had a pack of unlit cigarettes and popped that on there as well. But we didn't really have much luck with that ourselves. Again, I've mentioned furniture. I found books can be really interesting as well. I find because books were there way before newspapers or TV or radio, so I think a lot of people can tend to have a lot of sentimental feelings with books. But again, it depends on what reports that you found on that particular location itself. Hi Nanette, good to see you here, lovely. Hello Karen and Nicole. So there's that as well. So that's one aspect of trigger objects. Then of course there's the type that there is no emotion attached to them. So that can be where you're using your EMF detectors to see whether or not there's any activity around, or if there are, you want to use static detectors are pretty good as well. REM pods as well. I think Boo Buddy is another one too. It's a very popular one, controversial too. So there's all different types of bits of equipment that people can use to actually try and in the same way as a trigger object, but there is actually no sort of emotional attachment to it as well. And again, it could be a ball or a pen or anything like that too. So do they work? For myself, I haven't had much luck with it. But then again, I'm quite, I've always been very open for other investigators to try it out. I know there have been people that have had a lot of success with using trigger objects, particularly ones where they've been in historic locations and they've actually found that, a particular item was really cherished. I know a couple of people they've had experiences where they've actually been able to get some interesting activity possibly from that as well. So if you are looking at wanting to do that too, hey Jim, good to see you, mate. Must be a little bit easier at this time in America. So if you are looking at doing trigger object investigating or using it as an experiment, or of something that is quite sentimental to somebody or not, as we mentioned, it could be an oven. One thing is to make sure that if you are going to use whatever it is, that it's sitting on a flat surface. And that can be for many different reasons. When I was at Waverly Hills Sanatorium last year, the building the building is built for wind, so it obviously it was there for tuberculosis patients, so it had to be breezy as all get out. And of course the location at the moment obviously has no windows, so although that can be great from a spooky perspective, if you're setting up a trigger object and you're asking it to move, it's not so much. Now on the top floor they've got where they've got the children had actually stayed in that particular spot upstairs because it was where the weakest would be, because they were further away and it was also closer to the sun and it was fresher air. So the children and those who were dealing with mental illness were upstairs. You know, they all shared the same floor, and they people over the years have actually left balls there. And because it's so windy, you've got to be really, really careful about how when you do set something like that up, whether or not you're going to get a false positive. So keep in mind the environment that you're going to be setting something like this up in, and also what the type of surface you're going to be placing it on as well. Hey Dan, oh good. Oh, I'm glad you could join on a quick break. Good to see you, mate. Sort of see you. I'll see you, I think, on the weekend, which will be cool. So there's that too. Also, if I know a lot of groups tend to use flour or sugar, so what they do is they pour it on the ground and they'll place an object on there. That's a really cool thing as well, but most of the time we'll be in investigation locations where we aren't able to really do that because we can't vacuum it up later, and sometimes it can be historical locations as well, and they probably won't allow you to do that. So a way around that is actually placing a piece of paper underneath the object and tracing it out, and that's another way to be able to find out whether or not it's actually moved or not. So that kind of gets away from the whole messy thing of the good old flower trick, whether or not it's actually moved and if it's actually been contaminated as well. Another thing too is if you want to, a lot of groups use vibration detectors, and that's a great way to actually be able to place it next to the trigger object that you want to use. That can also help debunk any false positives, whether or not someone's bumped the table, the floor, stepped on something, banged on something. It will light up and you'll know whether or not when that object's moved at the time when that light's lit up, whether or not that actually is something that's been moved by vibration or is actually through something else. So that's another thing you can try out as well. I know a lot of people use trigger objects and actually do an audio recording session at the same time as well, so that's a cool thing. You know, can you move this torch or flashlight as they call it in the States? You know, I know it's a popular one, and some may sort of groan about that particular because it's a flashlight, and you know the fact there's been semi-famous people on TV on those shows that use it and have had success. But give it a shot, try it out. You might have something come up, you might not at all, but give it a shot. So that's one thing as well, is people using flashlights for that. But using any type of questioning as well. So can you please, would you, yes, switch it on for yes, switch it off for no, that kind of thing. See what happens. Give it a shot. You never know what you might find. So using it from an EVP perspective, trigger objects can be quite good from that angle as well. Now, one way to set them up is, obviously, best thing is having a video camera there. And if you've got two, that's great, but not all of us are cashed up to the eyeballs, so even just having one would be good. Excuse me for a moment. So that might be one way to do it, but obviously just making sure you've got a camera set on it and actually shutting the door and leaving the location. So that's one aspect or way to actually conduct it. You don't even have to be in the room, just make sure you know 100% that no one has been able to be in that room and it's been locked off as much as you possibly can. Again, 2 cameras is really good. One in the doorway, which is really handy, and one actually trained on the actual object as well. So that can be another aspect you can look at as well. And also, if you do want to make it an interactive investigation with a trigger object, being in the same room with your recorder and ask for them to move the object. So not even just from a switch on, switch off. Can you move it? Did you like it a lot? What did you love about this particular, dresser or chair or anything like that? And see if anything comes from that from an audio perspective. So an interactive type of investigation using a trigger object. Hi Marcus, how are you? Hey Vicky, used a teddy bear and a K2 meter once on an investigation. It worked okay. Oh, that's good. So see, people have had some really cool results from actually trying it out. And as I said, just because for myself I have tried and not had much success, Doesn't mean that anyone else shouldn't try it as well. I mean, this is the unknown. Give it a shot, see how you go. You might even come up with better ways and better ideas on how to run a particular investigation. Yeah, put them together, exactly. So you actually had the bear and the K2 next to each other, and obviously you would have been asking whether or not, if anything would be anywhere near the bear, and obviously your device would have reacted to that. So that's really cool. That's really cool. See you, Dan. So Dan's off. Can't keep a good man down. So there's some couple of ideas about some tips if you do want to do it. Do they work? For me, jury's still out, but again, give it a shot. See how you go. Try it out. And again, if you've got some great tips yourself or an experience that you've had, use the comment section. Even if you are watching the replay, you can actually jump in and still put some comments down as well. And if there's other things that you want to mention that you don't want anyone else to know about and you just want to let me know, you can always email me at accessparanormal@gmail.com. Thanks so much for watching. Again, I mentioned in the beginning, this will be the last time, the next 3 weeks, that I will be doing an I Want to Know, because I will be gallivanting around the world, which you'll hear all about tomorrow night in tomorrow night's announcement. At it's an hour earlier than this actual live feed. So if you think about when this started, think about an hour earlier, but in 24 hours time. So I'll be able to mention about it finally, and I'll have a special guest as well. And I would love, as always, to bring everybody with me while I do this. So you'll be able to find out how you can actually join in on the journey too. So do take care, and thanks for watching. See ya.